We settled Mars over a century ago. Making this dusty rock our home wasn't easy, but the promise that led us across the void was freedom. Something my family's bled for many times.
Hello there, Sir from 17 once again, bringing you the next Section 2, my Red Faction Armageddon Insane Difficulty video walkthrough. And this is just a continuation of the previous video, where we're going to be escorting the convoy for a little bit more of a distance. Nothing too challenging in this video, it's also slightly shorter than the last one, so it's an opportunity to talk about some more shit, and hopefully entertain. But I was playing some Guitar Hero earlier, because I was uploading, so I couldn't really do any online stuff on other games, and all the single players at this moment in time, I wasn't feeling them because I'm still feeling a bit, I'm still reeling from being ill last night and not quite over it just yet. So I'm in a bit of a just like a dull in the body kind of mood, which is why I'm glad I'm doing these commentaries, because they're enabling me to take my mind off them and try and come across in a better mood than I actually am, which is always a nice thing because it's escapism for me, and it's escapism for the people that listen to it, so it's a win-win. But I was playing it earlier, and it was the most recent one, The Warriors of Rock. And I just had a bash on a couple of songs I like to play, like the Sudden Death song by Megadeth, the final song of the game, and a couple of customs, which are absolutely insane. And when you've not played that game in a while, and I've not played it for months now, your hand is just nowhere near as good as it used to be when it comes to stamina. Don't get me wrong, my fingers are fine. They're just as capable as they were when I was playing it every day for hours on end. It's kind of that it's kind of the whole steroid metaphor that I'm going to use here, where if you've ever been on steroids, and I don't mean the ones that you inject, I don't mean metabolic steroids to increase muscle mass and shrink your balls. I mean the ones that are medicinal. I don't know what they're called, but I'm an asthmatic, so if I have a particular bad episode with my lungs, then they'll put me on steroids. And steroids are fantastic. Steroids are like a kiss from God. They truly are. You feel like you could dance on the moon, you could pick a car up, you could have sex with 3 women at the same time. They are a fantastic invention. And they open my lungs up, which is even better, so they're just brilliant. But what they are, the delusions of grandeur. In essence, it's medicinal delusions, because it convinces you and your body that you feel terrific and you feel awesome, when in actuality you really aren't. So for instance, in my case, if I were to get up and do any of those things I just mentioned, I would be absolutely knackered just through the effort of standing up too quickly, because if I'm on steroids it means my lungs are really bad and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. And Guitar Hero is very similar in this respect, because I think in my brain that I'm just as capable as I used to be at playing these 7-minute songs that are nothing but solos and constantly doing trills and all sorts of sweeps and ascending and descending scales. But when I play it, I do the first ridiculous solo and then my arm is killing and my wrist is aching and my fingers are like numbing, and I have to pause it, and I'm like out of breath, because I hold my breath when I play the hard bits and like wiggle my tongue because I'm a psycho and all that kind of stuff, and it's really funny. And for whatever reason, I played 3 songs, and my middle finger, the muscle where your knuckle is, the middle knuckle, not the one that you punch people with, the one that's just slightly down on your finger, for whatever reason it felt like I was pulling that, like I was going to get carpal tunnel or something silly, so I had to actually turn it off. And it was just really weird, and it just goes to show how when you do a certain exercise on any muscle on your body, that you do grow stamina with it. And for whatever reason it made me think of that French guy who's like Spider-Man, who climbs the skyscrapers with just chalk. He doesn't even use a safety line. And this is a fucking psycho, that the way he trains to get these muscles in his fingers, so great at holding his body weight and enabling him to do this climbing, that he has those, those climbing walls that you can go and do in those indoor arenas where they've got all those multicoloured like finger hole things. Well, imagine those that you use for grip, but imagine them on the roof, and he hangs and climbs about his roof. And obviously practices this way so that he doesn't fall off, and he gets ridiculous amounts of stamina in his fingers and in the muscles in between his fingers and all that kind of good stuff, and his arms and everything. Because what you have to bear in mind is it takes about 2 hours to climb some of these buildings, and I mean, I just can't even imagine it. But the guy's a psycho. If you've never seen him, YouTube him. He is a monster. He's been arrested so many times for climbing buildings he's not supposed to climb, but it just doesn't stop him. The guy has a death wish, and I get nervous just watching it. I can't even imagine doing it. The dude is a beast. But this section here is just like the last video. You're going to be cruising around with the convoy. You're in the overpowered exoskeleton, so just enjoy it. And I'm going to go back to the subject I mentioned on the last video. I'm not too sure if I'll have enough time to go through it all. But I will continue the conversation into the enslaved video I'm going to be commentating next. So I do apologise if you're only here to watch the Red Faction stuff and you want to find out more about this crazy wildlife documentary I watched, but you know, that's how it works. But the bear, anyhow, bear that's mauling this guy and splitting his scalp open and just having its way with him, his buddy in the tree starts shouting at the bear and trying to get its attention to save his mate. And this is actually one of the really touching parts of the documentary, because it's obviously showing you the people that were really there, and as this kid's reminiscing about being in this tree and watching this bear maul his friend, and the fact that he was absolutely powerless to do anything to stop it, and he even mentions that he randomly thought about dropping down just to do anything he could to help his friend. And if he'd have dropped down, that bear would have fucking killed him. It'd have killed him, it'd have killed his friend. And he knows this, but it still must be heartbreaking knowing that you were watching your friend get ripped apart, and you can see him filling up, and it was actually a really, really touching moment for a documentary, which is kind of cool. And he starts shouting at this bear, and because the bear's so agitated, it comes after him and it starts climbing the fucking tree. And I already knew that bears could climb. The thing with bears though is they're incredibly lazy when it comes to stuff like that, because what you've got to bear in mind is they climb by using their mouth and their claws, and it's a lot more difficult for them because they weigh like tons. And they did this example on this documentary, basically saying what this bear did to climb this tree to get at this other guy was the equivalent of pulling a piano up a 4-story building. That's how heavy this motherfucker was. And because it was so agitated, it had absolutely no problem with climbing this tree. So it gets all the way up this tree and it actually pulls the guy out of it, and he falls like the equivalent of falling out of a bedroom window. But luckily enough, he suffers no damage, he doesn't get injured or anything, and he manages to get to his feet and start running. And earlier on in the day, he'd taken his jacket off and put it on like a tree stump a couple yards away from where they got attacked. And inside his pocket is bear mace. Because if you don't know this, but bears have probably the most powerful nose in the animal kingdom. They have a really, really sensitive and unique nose. And the bear mace is the best way to deal with them because they hate it. And right now you're going to see a lovely little cut of me being from being stood here to being in a robot. And the reason that this happens is because when I go back up through on my first run, I got in the robot and I'd put it where the elevator comes down, so the elevator actually crushed my suit and I died. So that's the reason why I spawned in there with the robot, because that's where the checkpoint was. And when you come up here, you just have to kill some more enemies and everything. But anyhow, back to the story. So he gets this bear mace and he starts spraying it, and this bear immediately recoils and gets like knocked out. And it gets up and it's all groggy and it's like blowing its nose, all defeated, and it just trots off and goes off with its business back where it came from. And all because of this little mace that just stops this giant. And that's another one of those cases of it's like, if he'd have not taken his jacket off, how different that story would have played out. And it's just absolutely crazy when you think about stuff like that. That must haunt him, that, the poor guy. But I've got a minute and I don't want to get into another one of the stories, so I'll just talk about what's happening on the game. Right now the convoy is going to come from behind you and it's going to come over here to this lift. You want to be careful though, because if you stand in front of it, it'll say, "You are blocking the convoy," dickhead. So you need to watch out for that. But as soon as it gets onto this platform, both vehicles, it will start raising, and it is effectively the next section of the game, which I do believe is the Bastion stuff. So yes, the difficulty right now is not too bad. You'll probably not have too hard of a time for pretty much the rest of the game until you get to the second to the last level, where the difficulty just shoots up insanely. It just gets silly. And there's no preparation for it, there's no explanation for it, it's just bad game design, and yeah, you're going to have fun if you try and kill everything, that's all I'm going to say. But thanks for watching guys, I hope it helped, and you take care now.